The emergency medical technicians were throwing questions at me while I was frantically texting a neighbor, begging them to watch Zoe so I could ride in the ambulance. I grabbed my phone and called Lillian. She was still off at the resort. Through tears and a shaky voice, I told her what had happened. I expected panic. Some concern. Anything. But instead, she paused and said, "Is it really that bad?" Maybe she just wanted some attention. I stared at my screen, my blood boiling. I wanted to yell. But Ivy needed me more than I needed to fight with Lillian. I called off work, burned through my vacation days, and spent 3 nights straight sleeping in a stiff hospital chair by Ivy's side. One of those nights, Ivy looked up at me and said she thought her mom did not love her anymore. That was the moment I realized something had changed. The Lillian I thought I knew, the one who always talked about being a good mom, was gone. When Ivy was finally discharged, I fixed up a warm, safe room at my house for her. I tried over and over to talk to Lillian about everything, but she kept brushing me off. When she finally showed up at my place, more than a full day after landing, she was bronzed and relaxed like she had not had a worry in the world. She gave Ivy a weak half-hug, then immediately asked about the suitcase she had left behind. As I went over Ivy's recovery plan, Lillian's expression darkened. Her jaw clenched tighter with every word I said. And then, all at once, she lost it. She stood up, shouting that I was trying to parent her daughter behind her back, accusing me of making too big a deal out of everything. She probably just wanted attention, Lillian snapped. Then I heard it, a soft, broken sob. Ivy was standing in the hallway, tears running down her face. Lillian barely glanced at her. My heart was pounding in my chest. "Are you serious?" I yelled. I told Lillian she picked the beach over her own daughter's life. She rolled her eyes and said, "Teenagers are dramatic. You should have known better." That was it. I exploded. I told her the truth, that she was selfish, that she always put herself first, and that her daughter's life apparently was only worth $250 to her. Lillian's voice dropped, low and bitter. "You have no idea what it is like to need a break from your kids." In that instant, something broke between us. Something I knew would never be fixed. I saw who she really was. Lillian grabbed Ivy's bag and told her to come with her. But Ivy ran to the bathroom, locked the door, and cried like her whole world had fallen apart. That was the moment things really blew up. Lillian just snapped, started screaming at me, claiming I had kidnapped her daughter. Before I could even react, she pulled out her phone and said she was calling the police. "Go ahead," I told her. "Let's see what they think about a mom who stayed on vacation while her daughter nearly died." That only made her angrier. She stormed off in a fury. About 15 minutes later, she came marching back, this time with 2 police officers in tow. And she really did it. She was accusing me of kidnapping Ivy. You could tell the officers were uncomfortable from the start. The moment they got a clearer picture of what was actually going on, their faces shifted. I handed over the hospital discharge papers and started explaining everything that had happened, how Ivy had tried to take her own life and how I had been the one taking care of her. But Lillian kept cutting in, spinning some bizarre story that I was obsessed with her daughter, trying to replace her as Ivy's mom. It was wild. One of the officers, a calm, older man, asked, "Ma'am, where is the minor right now?" "She's locked herself in the bathroom," I said. "She's terrified to go with her mother." The female officer, Officer Vega, gently approached the bathroom door and knocked. "Ivy, I'm Officer Vega. Mind if we talk for a moment?" It took a little coaxing, but finally, the door creaked open. Ivy came out looking wrecked, face blotchy, hands shaking. And right then, Lillian pounced. "Ivy, stop acting like this. You're just making a big scene." The officers exchanged a quiet look, and Officer Vega suggested they speak to Ivy in private. Lillian immediately pushed back, but the male officer stepped in and told her firmly that they needed to hear from Ivy without interruptions. As they walked Ivy away for a private conversation, Lillian paced the hallway, muttering loud accusations about me turning her daughter against her. Meanwhile, Zoe, who had been quietly sitting nearby, started recording Lillian's outbursts on her phone without anyone noticing. After about 20 minutes, the officers returned with Ivy. Officer Vega looked at us and said, "This is outside our scope. What you need here is professional help." She made a call. Roughly an hour and a half later, a Child Protective Services worker arrived, Ms. Brewer. She took Ivy aside to speak with her privately while Lillian continued to rant in the hallway, saying I had manipulated everything. When the interview was over, Ms. Brewer gently suggested that Ivy stay in a place where she felt safe for the next 72 hours, just until a full evaluation could be done. Lillian looked like she might explode. But I think she realized that throwing another fit in front of Child Protective Services was not going to help her. "Fine," she snapped. 72 hours. But I need to grab a few of her things from the guest room. I did not trust Lillian to be alone in there for even a second. So I went with her to help collect Ivy's things. We went upstairs to grab Ivy's things. The second we were out of earshot, Lillian turned on me like a switch flipping. "You think this is over?" she hissed. "You've ruined everything. Ivy is my daughter, not yours. And I swear, I will make sure everyone knows exactly who you really are. I'll destroy your life for this." What Lillian did not know was that Zoe had quietly followed us up the stairs. She was standing just outside the room, her phone recording everything. You could clearly hear Lillian say, "I don't even want to deal with a moody teenager. Do you think I enjoy this?" When she finally left, she slammed every single door on the way out, then tore out of my driveway so fast her tires screeched. As she pulled away, she shouted that she'd be coming back, with real authorities who would be on her side. I did the only thing I could think of. I called my sister. She's a family lawyer. I told her everything and asked what I needed to do. She gave it to me straight, document everything. Every single message, every conversation, every witness. Start keeping a journal. Save screenshots. Write down every date and time. No detail was too small. That night, my phone blew up. Messages were flooding in from mutual friends. Lillian had gone public. She was already posting on social media, saying I was unstable and that I had kidnapped her daughter. Some people were confused, just asking what was going on. Others, shockingly, took Lillian's side without asking me a thing. But a few close friends reached out with support. I was stunned by how fast things were spiraling. Only 2 weeks ago, Lillian and I were making plans for our usual summer beach trip. Now she was dragging my name through the mud and I was trying to protect her daughter from her. The next day, I took Ivy to her therapy appointment. We were sitting in the waiting room when Lillian suddenly burst through the door, demanding to join the session. I'm her mother. I have every right to be in that room. The therapist, Dr. Lin, came out right away. Calmly, she asked Lillian to step into her office to talk before making any decisions. Lillian reluctantly followed her, leaving me and Ivy alone in the waiting room. I turned to Ivy. You okay? She stared down at her hands. There's something I haven't told anyone, she whispered. The real reason I did what I did. I saw messages on Mom's phone. She was texting her friend Sierra, saying she hated being a mom. That she wished she could just run away and never come back. My heart broke right there. I'm so sorry, Ivy, I told her. But you've got to tell Dr. Lin. Or the CPS worker. The more they know, the more they can help. And you're not going anywhere, no matter what, you always have a place with us. About 25 minutes later, Dr. Lin came back out. Her face looked troubled. Lillian stormed out right behind her, fuming that Dr. Lin was biased and unprofessional. She never even looked at Ivy as she walked past. Dr. Lin asked to speak with both me and Ivy together. She recommended ongoing therapy. Dr. Lin said it plain and clear, Ivy needed to stay in a steady, supportive place. For now, that meant our home. Back at the house, I got a letter in the mail. Lillian had filed for an emergency custody hearing. My chest tightened with panic. But then Miss Brewer from Child Protective Services called. She explained that Dr. Lin had submitted an official report raising serious red flags about Lillian's ability to parent. Because of that, the emergency hearing was being postponed until a full investigation could be done. That should have felt like a weight lifted, but really, it was just the start of what turned into a full-blown war. Lillian started blowing up Ivy's phone, constant calls, non-stop texts. A year and a half minute, it was guilt trips, I guess you don't love me anymore. The next, it was over-the-top affection, you're my whole world, baby girl. Then she'd flip again, you're making me look bad. Stop exaggerating what happened. Ivy showed me everything. I helped her block the number and made sure to save every message and screenshot for CPS. It tore me up to watch her go through that. A teenager, feeling like she had to defend herself, from her own mother. Word started to spread in our social circle. Once folks understood the whole story, most of them stood by us. But Lillian got to a few of them first. Convinced them I was trying to steal her kid. Some of those people even called me, or worse, showed up at my front door, asking what the heck I thought I was doing. I just kept my head down, focused on keeping Ivy safe. One afternoon, I tried to take the girls out for ice cream. Just a simple break from all the chaos. But right there in the parking lot, we ran into Jody, Lillian's closest friend. She didn't even say hello. Just whipped out her phone and started filming, screaming about parental alienation and accusing me of brainwashing Ivy. The girls were both in tears. I rushed them back to the car. This is my life now. Keeping detailed records of everything. Talking to my sister daily about legal steps. Trying to be strong for Ivy as she works through the pain. And protecting both her and Zoe from Lillian, who's been getting more unhinged by the day. The investigation is still ongoing. Ivy's school counselor has started calling me, saying they're worried. She's missed a lot of school. And I just keep asking myself, how did we get here? How did 16 years of friendship end up in flames like this? Was this side of Lillian always there, and I just never saw it? Or did something snap along the way? Whatever the answer, one thing is clear, I am not going anywhere. Ivy deserves to feel loved and safe. And if Lillian can't give her that, then I will. For as long as it takes. But I am scared. Lillian's already shown how far she's willing to go, filing false police reports, twisting the truth to anyone who'll listen. What happens when the 72-hour window ends? What if the court sends Ivy back? I'm doing my best to take it one day at a time. But the pressure's crushing. Zoe's worried about her best friend. My husband is trying to stay strong, but I can tell he's concerned about the legal mess we're walking into. And me? I'm just trying to hold it all together. Everything felt like it was hanging by a thread. The 72-hour period set by Child Protective Services was almost over, and I was on edge, barely holding it together. Ivy had not made it through a single night without waking up in tears. More than once, I found her sitting quietly in the hallway between our bedroom and Zoe's, too afraid to sleep alone but not wanting to wake anyone either. My husband, Ethan, had been incredible through it all. He made Ivy her favorite pancakes in the mornings and helped both girls with their homework, trying to keep things as normal as possible. But the day before the deadline, things reached a breaking point. Ivy had a full-blown panic attack. I had never seen her like that, gasping for air, her body shaking, and repeating, "Please don't make me go back, please, don't make me go back," over and over again. Eventually, we got her calmed down. She curled up in bed with Zoe beside her, finally falling asleep. Ethan and I sat in the kitchen, completely drained. What if they send her back? I whispered. I did not want the girls to hear me. You saw her tonight. She's terrified. Ethan reached across the table and held my hand. We'll figure something out. Your sister's coming tomorrow morning, right? She'll know what to do. At 8 a.m. sharp, Sutton walked through the door looking like she meant business, dressed in a navy suit, laptop under one arm, a thick folder in the other. She set up shop at our dining room table and turned it into a legal command center. She looked over every document we had, screenshots of Lillian's texts, Zoe's recordings, detailed notes on every incident. "You did a good job keeping records," she said, flipping through the papers. "This will help. But just be ready. Family court can be unpredictable. Judges often give biological parents the benefit of the doubt." At 9 a.m., Ms. Brewer from Child Protective Services arrived for a follow-up visit. She spoke with Ivy alone again, then sat down with Ethan and me afterward. Her face was serious but kind. "Based on Dr. Lynn's report and what I've observed," she said, "I'm going to recommend that temporary guardianship be granted to you while a full evaluation continues." Relief washed over me, then dread came right behind it. "There's going to be a hearing tomorrow," she added. "Lillian has already hired a lawyer and she's fighting this aggressively." Almost like she had a sixth sense, my phone buzzed with a message from Lillian. "Hope you enjoyed playing mommy. See you in court tomorrow." The rest of the day was a blur. Sutton walked Ivy through everything, what the courtroom might look like, how to talk to the judge if asked. Ethan took Zoe to stay with his parents so she would not be around for the chaos. I barely touched food. I hardly slept. My mind kept racing, imagining the worst. The next day, we walked into family court expecting a big courtroom like you see on television. Instead, it looked more like a conference room, plain, small, quiet. Lillian was already there, seated next to a polished attorney in a sharp, expensive suit. She did not look at us. Just stared straight ahead, a faint smirk on her lips. Ivy clung to my hand, her grip tight and shaking. Sutton placed a steady hand on her shoulder as we sat down. The judge, a woman named Judge Anand, looked calm but sharp. She wore glasses and had the kind of expression that told you she did not waste time. She opened the file and began reading. It felt like time slowed to a crawl. It felt like we were sitting there forever before the judge finally looked up. "I have reviewed the materials from Child Protective Services, the hospital, and Dr. Lynn," Judge Anand said, her voice steady. "I'd like to speak with Ivy alone, in chambers." Lillian's lawyer immediately jumped in, claiming I had manipulated Ivy or fed her lines to say. But Judge Anand did not flinch. She overruled him and led Ivy out of the courtroom. Those next 20 minutes were brutal. Lillian kept shooting daggers at me from across the room while whispering angrily with her attorney. I just sat there, trying not to crumble. When Ivy came back, her face was pale and tired, but she seemed steadier somehow. Stronger. Judge Anand adjusted her glasses and addressed the room. "After reviewing all submitted evidence and speaking directly with Ivy, I am placing her under the temporary guardianship of Mr. and Mrs. Alden for the next 30 days. During this period, we will conduct a full evaluation of the family situation." You could hear Lillian gasp across the room. Her lawyer moved to speak, but the judge raised her hand to continue. "Mrs. Mercer will be allowed 3 supervised visits per week at the Family Services Center. In addition, she is required to undergo a psychological assessment and attend a series of parenting classes prior to the next court date." Lillian stood abruptly, red in the face. "This is insane. She's my daughter." "Mrs. Mercer," the judge said, her voice firm now. "Sit down and compose yourself, or I will find you in contempt. This decision is temporary and made in Ivy's best interest." The courtroom went quiet again. As we left, Lillian brushed past Ivy without even looking at her. She stormed out of the building, her attorney scrambling to keep up. In the parking lot, Ivy collapsed into me, sobbing uncontrollably. But this time, the tears were different. They were filled with relief. "I don't have to go back," she whispered, clinging to me. "I don't have to go back." Sutton spoke softly. 30 days, sweetheart. That's what's been granted. But we're going to keep fighting for longer if we need to." And that was just the beginning. Lillian skipped her first 2 supervised visits entirely. Then, at the third one, she showed up like a completely different person, smiling too wide, carrying bags full of gifts for Ivy. But it felt hollow. The visit supervisor later wrote in her report that Lillian seemed more focused on taking staged photos than having a real conversation. Everything looked like it was for social media. And that is exactly what it turned into. Lillian launched a public campaign, painting herself as a heartbroken mother who was being kept from her child by a delusional woman. Me. She rewrote history, calling Ivy's suicide attempt an accidental overdose, and claiming I was using the situation to manipulate everyone. Day after day, she posted dramatic captions and carefully posed photos. She turned the truth into a twisted performance. Some people bought it. Vanessa, who I had trusted for many years, sent me a message telling me to stop feeding the drama and return Ivy to her mom. Derek, someone I had once considered like family, left a voicemail saying I was ruining a mother-daughter relationship. But it was Ivy who suffered most. Each time she began to make real progress, maybe smile a little more, sleep a little better, another one of Lillian's lies would pop up online. And just like that, Ivy would fall apart again. One evening, she showed me messages from a group chat with kids from Lillian's neighborhood. They were calling her a liar. An attention seeker. Some said she made everything up to get out of chores. Tears welled up in her eyes. "Why won't she just leave me alone?" she sobbed. "She doesn't even want me, why is she doing this?" I had no good answer. Nothing that would take away the hurt. So I just wrapped my arms around her and held her while she cried. And I promised, again, that we would not stop fighting for her peace. Zoe was having a tough time too. Some of her friends stopped talking to her, because their parents had taken Lillian's side. She was dealing with whispers at school, cruel comments in the hallways. But even through all that, Zoe never turned her back on Ivy. She defended her fiercely. Onady, she even got suspended for standing up to a kid who was spreading lies about Ivy's suicide attempt being fake. 2 weeks into the guardianship, Lillian escalated things again. She showed up, uninvited, at one of Ivy's therapy sessions, yelling so loudly that the building security had to step in and escort her out. That very same day, I came out of my office to find the word thief scratched deep into the driver's side of my car. I could not prove Lillian did it, but the timing said enough. Ethan was getting more and more concerned about safety. He installed cameras around the house and replaced all the locks. Ivy had mentioned that Lillian still had a spare key from years ago when she used to house sit for us. It felt extreme, but we couldn't take chances anymore. As the 30-day court review approached, we started to feel a little hopeful. Ms. Brewer had completed her assessment and was recommending that Ivy stay with us for at least 10 more months. Dr. Lynn's report was strong. She said Ivy was finally starting to make progress, and that sending her back to Lillian would undo everything. We were starting to breathe again. But just 3 days before the hearing, it happened. We got blindsided. Lillian's lawyer filed an emergency motion, claiming that Ivy's biological father, Colin, now wanted custody. It made no sense. Lillian had always told us that Colin had disappeared when Ivy was still in diapers. She said he abandoned them, never paid a cent, never showed any interest. Ivy didn't even know what the man looked like. Sutton was furious. "This is a stall tactic," she said. "They're running out of arguments, so they're throwing in a last-minute wrench to buy more time." The judge delayed the hearing by 2 weeks to investigate. I was overwhelmed with frustration. But Sutton saw a possible opening. "If Colin really is in the picture," she said, "maybe we should talk to him. Lillian's version might not be the whole story." Ivy was hesitant. Understandably. But she was curious, too. After all, she had grown up hearing only one side of things. With her blessing, Sutton hired a private investigator. A few days later, he tracked Colin Hartley down, living just 4 hours away in a quiet town. He was married, had 2 young kids, and worked as an architect. Everything about him clashed with Lillian's old claims of him being a deadbeat who walked away. I was nervous. What if he was who Lillian said he was? What if he didn't want anything to do with Ivy? But we had to know. Sutton called him first, kept it professional, gave him the rundown. To our surprise, Colin said he wanted to speak with all of us. That same evening, we set up a video call. When his face appeared on the screen, I was stunned. Ivy looked just like him. Those same green eyes. That same sharp chin. He looked nervous but genuine. "Ivy," he said, his voice catching. "I can't believe it's really you." Ivy was silent, staring at the man she had never met. I gently squeezed her shoulder. Then Colin began to tell his story, and it was nothing like what we had heard from Lillian. They met in college. When Lillian got pregnant, they tried to make things work. For a while, they managed. They broke up when Ivy was 1.5 but kept things civil. Colin paid child support, visited regularly, and stayed involved. But when Ivy turned 5, Lillian got a new job and moved to our city, 250 miles away. She promised to sort out new visitation. Colin said he tried, he really did. After Ivy's mom moved away, she had promised they would figure out a new visitation schedule. But that promise faded fast. First, there were excuses. Ivy had the flu. They had weekend plans. The timing was never right. Eventually, she just stopped answering his calls altogether. Colin got a lawyer and tried to fight for his rights, but every time he made progress, Lillian switched jobs or moved to a new address. He kept sending birthday presents and holiday gifts, but none were ever acknowledged. And then, when Ivy was 8, he got a cease and desist letter. It accused him of causing emotional trauma. Said that Ivy was terrified of him and wanted no contact. The words shattered him. Colin's voice trembled. I didn't want to hurt her, so I backed off. I kept paying child support through the state. But Lillian made it clear, I wasn't welcome in my daughter's life. He showed us a small box he had kept all those years. It was full of unopened birthday cards, returned envelopes, and little trinkets meant for Ivy. He had followed her life from afar, through bits and pieces shared by old acquaintances or the rare photo on social media, always hoping, just hoping, she might reach out someday. Beside me, Ivy sat quietly, tears streaking her cheeks. She told me you left, Ivy whispered. That you didn't want to be a dad. That you never sent anything. Never cared. Colin shook his head slowly. I never stopped caring. I never stopped trying. Ivy said nothing, but I could see the gears turning inside her. It was a lot to take in. After the call, she locked herself in her room for hours. When she finally came out, her eyes were red and puffy, but something in her head shifted. I want to meet him, she said, her voice clear and sure. Face to face. Colin brought photo albums, pictures from when Ivy was a baby, snapshots of family members she never knew she had. She learned she had 2 younger half-siblings, a stepmom named Elise who taught high school art, and grandparents who had been saving every birthday gift for years, just in case they might one day give them to her in person. While they sat together flipping through old photos, I stepped outside to give them a little space. That's when my phone buzzed with a notification from Lillian's social media. She had posted a moody selfie next to a picture of toddler Ivy, with a caption that read, "Missing my baby girl. Manipulated into hating me." Now her deadbeat dad pretends to care after 16 years. Money really changes people. I felt rage rise up in me. The lies. The shameless manipulation. But then Ethan walked out and handed me his phone. Look at this, he said. Lillian's story was starting to unravel. People were pushing back. Old classmates of hers and Colin's were commenting, recalling how things really went down. Colin's sister had even posted bank records showing years of child support payments and photos of the returned gifts. A year-and-a-half person even posted an old group photo of Colin holding toddler Ivy, proof that he had been there, at least at first. Lillian's version of the story was crumbling. At last, the extended custody hearing arrived. Colin came, not to fight for custody himself, but to stand by Ivy. He told the court he simply wanted to support her decision to stay with us, while slowly building a relationship with her over time. His testimony about being pushed out of Ivy's life clearly left an impression on Judge Anand. Lillian's attorney tried to paint Colin as a man trying to swoop in now that things were convenient, but the evidence told a different story. Cards returned, payments made, contact blocked. And then the real shock came, from someone we never expected. Lillian's boyfriend, Miles, walked into the courtroom and asked to testify. Lillian looked like she had seen a ghost when Miles walked into the courtroom. She clearly had not expected him to show up. When he took the stand, he didn't hold back. Miles testified that Lillian had admitted to deliberately cutting Ivy off from her father. He said she confessed to using Ivy mainly as content, posting photos and emotional stories online to boost her image as a devoted single mom. That was it for Lillian. She exploded, screaming across the courtroom that Miles was lying just because she had dumped him. Judge Anand banged her gavel and warned Lillian, again, that she was on the verge of being held in contempt. Eventually, things settled down enough for the judge to rule. She granted me 5 more months of temporary guardianship. Lillian's visitation was cut down to once a week, and only with supervision. Colin was officially given visitation rights too. Judge Anand also ordered that all parties, including Lillian, begin family therapy. Lillian would not even be considered for shared custody until she completed parenting classes and individual counseling. Outside the courtroom, Lillian stormed up to me, her face contorted with rage. "This isn't over," she hissed. "You've turned everyone against me, but I'll get my daughter back." Colin stepped in front of me. "Lillian, stop. This isn't about you or Rachel. This is about what Ivy needs." But Lillian didn't even acknowledge him. She was locked in on me, her eyes burning. "You think you're so perfect? So noble? I'll make sure everyone sees who you really are." Miles stepped in before it could escalate further, gently pulling Lillian away before courthouse security had to get involved. I was shaking. But Ivy looked more at peace than I'd seen in weeks. She had faced her mom in court. Spoken up. Told Judge Anand, in her own words, that she didn't feel safe going back and wanted to stay with us. It had taken unbelievable courage. For a little while after that, life started to settle into something that resembled normal. Ivy kept going to therapy twice a week. She visited Colin and his new family on some weekends, slowly getting to know them. She even started going back to school on a modified schedule, with her counselor keeping close tabs on her emotional health. Lillian, meanwhile, made only a brief attempt to meet the court's requirements. She went to one parenting class, then stopped. She missed her first 2 supervised visits with Ivy and showed up to the third one reeking of alcohol. The visit's supervisor ended it early and filed a report. She kept posting online, but her audience was shrinking. More and more people were starting to see through her story. Just when I thought we might finally be turning a corner, everything took another dark turn. I got a call from the school one afternoon. Ivy had received dozens of anonymous text messages, cruel, vicious things. Messages telling her she should finish the job next time. Someone had shared her phone number and encouraged others to harass her. They found Ivy in the school bathroom, in the middle of a full-blown panic attack. I rushed over and brought her straight to the police. The officer we spoke to was kind but realistic. Tracing the anonymous numbers might not be possible. Still, he filed a report, took screenshots of everything, and advised us to change her phone number immediately. That night, after Ivy finally fell asleep with the help of some anxiety medication from Dr. Lin, Ethan and I sat at the kitchen table, trying to figure out what we could do next. Then Zoe walked in, her face pale. She held out her phone. "Mom. I found something," she said. Someone had made a fake social media profile using Ivy's name and photo. The account was filled with disgusting lies, claiming Ivy had faked her suicide attempt for attention, calling herself names, spreading vicious rumors. "I think Aunt Lillian made it," Zoe whispered. Lately, Zoe had started calling her Aunt Lillian instead of just Lillian. Quietly, gradually, like she was trying to put some distance between herself and someone she once admired. Someone she used to trust. She showed me the fake profile again. "Look at these words," she said. "Seeking attention, causing drama for no reason, that's exactly how she talks. And she was right. Those weren't random insults. That was Lillian's voice, just disguised behind a fake account pretending to be Ivy. We reported the profile and had it taken down. But the harm had already been done. Ivy's classmates had seen it. Her group chats were buzzing. The damage was spreading fast. The next morning, Ivy didn't want to get out of bed. I didn't push. She had already carried far too much. I called Dr. Lin, who scheduled an emergency session that afternoon. I stayed home from work, keeping close in case Ivy needed me. Then, around midday, there was a sudden pounding at the front door, loud, aggressive. It was Lillian. She looked disheveled and furious. I cracked the door open just enough to speak through the security chain. "Where is she?" Lillian snapped. "I know she's here. I want to see my daughter, now." "Lillian," I said, keeping my voice steady. "You know the rules. If you want to see Ivy, you need to go through family services. You're not allowed to show up like this. You've poisoned them all against me, Ivy, Colin, even Miles," she hissed. "You've ruined my life. Please leave," I told her. "You're violating the court order by being here." "I'm not leaving without my daughter," she screamed, slamming her shoulder into the door. The chain held, but barely. "I'm calling the police," I warned. "Do it. They can't keep a mother from her child forever," she shouted. I shut the door, locked it, and called 911. Upstairs, I could hear Ivy crying. I texted Ethan at work, telling him what was going on. The police got there within minutes. Lillian switched gears instantly, suddenly tearful and soft-spoken, saying she was just a worried mother, stopping by after hearing her daughter wasn't at school. But the officers had been fully briefed on the case. They knew the terms of the court order. They escorted her off the property, firm but calm. As she reached the curb, Lillian turned back, eyes wild, and shouted, "I'll never stop fighting for her, never." The whole ordeal left us shaken. Ivy was terrified. She kept asking what would happen if Lillian came back when no one was there to stop her. Zoe was livid, angry in a way I hadn't seen before. She said she wished Lillian would just disappear. Ethan started seriously considering new security measures. Maybe even moving. Anywhere that would give us more peace. Dr. Lin had an idea, something therapeutic. She suggested Ivy write a letter to Lillian, not to send, but just to get the feelings out. To speak her truth without fear of judgment. Ivy spent hours on that letter. Pages and pages poured out of her, years of pain, confusion, anger. When she finally let me read it, I was speechless. "I think I understand now," she had written. "Mom never really wanted me. She wanted the idea of me. The perfect daughter for her perfect mom story. But when I started thinking for myself, when I struggled, I didn't fit the image anymore. I'm not a prop in her life. I'm a real person." Reading those words broke my heart, and filled it, too. Despite everything, Ivy was finding her voice. Finding her strength. And then, 2 weeks later, came the news that changed everything again. The police had traced the source of those anonymous, abusive text messages. They led back to a burner phone, bought at a convenience store just blocks away from Lillian's apartment. The police found more than just a phone. Security footage from the convenience store showed Lillian herself buying the burner phone. And Miles, still holding on to evidence, had handed over screenshots of messages where Lillian bragged about teaching Ivy a lesson. One message read, "She chose Rachel over me. She needs to learn what happens when you're disloyal." That was enough. Lillian was arrested, charged with harassment, cyberbullying, and violating the restraining order. She was released on bail the next day, but the damage was already done. Her lawyer dropped her as a client. The court suspended all visitation rights, even the supervised ones, pending her criminal trial. News spread fast. People who had once taken Lillian's side started reaching out, some to apologize, others to offer support. Ivy even received kind messages from classmates who had once believed the worst. The tide had turned. That weekend, Colin invited Ivy to stay with his family. It was a big step, and for the first time, Ivy said she felt ready. Watching her pack her overnight bag with nervous excitement reminded me that, underneath everything, she was still just a teenage girl trying to figure out who she was. I felt a pang of something, not sadness exactly, but something close. Maybe the quiet fear of being left behind. But I reminded myself, this is what healing looks like. The next morning, I was flipping pancakes when Ivy came into the kitchen with a worried look. She handed me her phone. A new text message. No name attached, just an unknown number. Hope you enjoyed playing Happy Family with Colin. Don't forget who your real parent is. This isn't over. My heart sank. When did you get this? I asked. Late last night, she said. I didn't want to scare you. I called Sutton right away. She told us to report it immediately. It was another clear violation of the restraining order. The officer who took the report shook his head. He looked tired, frustrated. We'll add it to the case file, he said. But I'd recommend getting Ivy a new number. Again. For days later, we got another update, this one from Lillian's new attorney. Lillian had checked herself into a mental health facility, citing emotional distress. The move delayed her criminal hearing. Lillian's new attorney filed a motion, arguing that she needed treatment, not punishment. I had mixed feelings. Part of me genuinely hoped she would get the help she clearly needed. But another part of me, frankly, the louder part, wondered if this was just another move. Another ploy to earn sympathy from the court. Either way, it gave us something we hadn't had in months, a little peace. With things calmer for the moment, Ivy focused on school, rebuilding friendships, and deepening her connection with her dad. Some days were better than others. The nightmares and anxiety attacks still came, but less often now. Dr. Lin said she was making real progress. Lillian spent 4 weeks in the mental health facility. When she got out, she was formally diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder and placed on medication. Therapy became a mandatory part of her treatment. Her criminal case ended in a plea deal, probation, ongoing mental health treatment, and a 1-year restraining order prohibiting any contact with Ivy. The custody situation, however, became more complicated now that Colin was actively involved. He filed for shared custody, wanting to be a real part of Ivy's life. Lillian's attorney pushed back, trying to preserve her parental rights despite her limited access. Judge Anand called for a full family evaluation before making any final decisions. Through all the court motions, meetings, and assessments, Ivy stayed with us. Her bond with Colin and his family continued to grow at a healthy, steady pace. Lillian, for her part, followed her treatment plan on the surface, but never quite stopped posting veiled, bitter messages online about being alienated from her daughter and failed by the system. Ivy's 15th birthday approached. It would be her first without Lillian, but also her first with the father and family she had only just begun to know. She asked for something simple. No big party. Just dinner with the people who had stood by her. We planned a quiet celebration, our family, Colin's family, and Ivy's 2 closest friends. That night, as we were finishing the decorations, the doorbell rang. Ethan opened the door and returned holding a large box. On it was a label, "Happy Birthday from Mom." Ivy stared at it. "I don't want to open it," she said. "You don't have to," I assured her. "But, what if it's something strange? Or scary? Shouldn't we check?" She had a point. Ethan carefully opened the box while we stood back, watching. Inside was a photo album and a sealed envelope. He checked everything to be sure it was safe before handing it to Ivy. She sat quietly, flipping through the pages of the album. Photos we'd never seen, her first steps, early birthdays, holidays long forgotten. The letter was surprisingly soft in tone. It expressed regret. Asked her to remember the good times. It was signed, "Love always, Mom." Ivy didn't say much. Just quietly closed the book and handed it to me. "Can you put this somewhere for now?" she asked. "I'm not ready to go through it. But maybe someday." "Of course," I said, taking it gently. "Whenever you're ready." Her birthday dinner the next evening was everything she had hoped for. Colin and Elise brought thoughtful gifts, a professional camera Ivy had been dreaming about, and a handmade quilt sewn with pieces of fabric from her grandparents' old clothes. It was their way of giving her a piece of the family history she had missed. Zoe gave her a bracelet she made herself, with charms tied to their inside jokes, just the two of them. Ethan and I handed her a letter. Inside, it read, "This is your home. For as long as you want it to be." Ivy smiled. And in that moment, I saw the beginning of something new, not just healing, but hope. 8 months had passed since Ivy's suicide attempt when the final custody hearing was scheduled. We braced ourselves for a fight in court. But to our surprise, Lillian didn't argue. She stood quietly as the terms were read out. And when given the chance to speak, she didn't lash out. Instead, she stepped forward, composed but changed somehow, her voice clearer, less performative. "I know my actions hurt my daughter," she said. "I've spent a long time thinking only about what I wanted, instead of what she needed. I want to be better. Even if being her mother looks different now than I once imagined." Judge Anand nodded, visibly moved. She approved the arrangement with a plan for regular reviews to ensure accountability. Outside the courtroom, Lillian approached slowly. Ivy immediately tensed beside me, and I instinctively placed an arm across her shoulders. Lillian stopped a few feet away and spoke softly. "Ivy, I know it's hard to believe me right now. And I don't expect you to trust me. But I am trying. Really trying. I hope one day, you'll be willing to let me back into your life, even just a little." Ivy didn't answer. She gave a small, guarded nod. Lillian didn't push. She simply turned and walked away. As we made our way to the car, Ivy was quiet for a long time. Finally, she spoke. "Do you think she meant it? That she's really trying to change?" I thought about it for a moment before answering. "I don't know. Some people can change, but it takes time. Real work. And even then, rebuilding trust, that's something no one can rush." "I'm not ready to forgive her," Ivy said, firmly. "You don't have to," I told her. "Forgiveness isn't something you owe. It's something you decide, if and when you're ready. No one else gets to set that timeline." That night, I found her outside, curled up on the porch swing under the stars. I sat beside her. We didn't speak at first, just rocked quietly together in the cool air. Then she turned toward me. "Thank you," she said. "Not just for that night. But for everything since. For not giving up on me." My throat tightened as I wrapped an arm around her. And for a while, things stayed quiet. Ivy began going to therapy regularly again. Dr. Lin said she was making meaningful progress. She even started attending school full-time, with the agreement that she could call me anytime she felt overwhelmed. Colin continued to step up as a father, gentle, reliable, never pushing too hard. He let Ivy lead. He was showing her what stability looked like. But I should have known Lillian wasn't done. Right after winter break, Ivy came home with tears in her eyes. She handed me her phone. Lillian had started a Facebook group, Mother's Rights, and it was dedicated almost entirely to our situation. She had roped in some women from Ivy's old neighborhood and was using the group to spin a twisted story, that I was a manipulative friend who stole her daughter. The worst part? She had posted photos of Ivy, including some from her hospital stay. How did she even get those? Ivy asked, hands trembling. I never gave her permission. I called Sutton immediately. We filed another complaint, this time for violating the restraining order and for unauthorized use of Ivy's images. But the damage had already begun. Strangers were messaging Ivy online, calling her ungrateful, saying she didn't deserve her mother. It felt like we were back at square one, ready for another fight. Then, something surprising happened. A woman named Marlene reached out to me privately. She was one of the moms from Lillian's group. She told me she had joined because she believed Lillian's story, at first. But the more she read, the more holes she noticed. I found the court documents, she wrote. They don't match what Lillian's saying. When I asked her about it, she lost it. Started accusing me of betrayal. Turns out, Marlene wasn't alone. More women began questioning Lillian's version of events. Within days, the support group began to unravel. Several members posted public apologies to Ivy, acknowledging they'd been misled. Then Lillian did something unexpected. She shut the group down. Completely wiped it off the internet. And after that, she went silent. Do you think she's finally giving up? Ethan asked one night, after the girls were asleep. I shook my head slowly. I don't think Lillian knows how to give up, I said. She's just reloading. And I was right. 2.5 weeks later, Ivy came to me, hesitant. Mom, she said. Then paused. I mean, Rachel. She corrected herself. Though, I could tell by the way she looked at me, deep down, she meant both. Every time Ivy slipped and called me Mom, my heart swelled, just a little. That day, she walked into the kitchen, clutching her school-issued laptop. She's emailing my teachers now, she said quietly, showing me the screen. Lillian had contacted every one of Ivy's teachers, claiming she was concerned about her daughter's academic performance. She asked for weekly updates, assignments, grades, even attendance. This, despite the court order clearly stating that all communication about Ivy's education was to go through either me or Colin. But Lillian wasn't finished. Her next move hit even deeper. Dr. Lynn called me immediately after Ivy's next therapy session. Her voice was calm, but I could hear the unease underneath. I wanted to make you aware, she said, that Lillian somehow got a hold of my professional email address. She sent me a long message, trying to outline what she calls Ivy's history of manipulative and attention-seeking behavior. I've reported it to the court. When I told Ivy, her face crumpled. She hugged her knees to her chest and whispered, "She's trying to turn everyone against me. Even my therapist." "She won't succeed," I said gently. Dr. Lynn sees through it. And so does everyone else who matters. It helped, a little. But I could see the weight Ivy was carrying. And not just Ivy, Zoe, too. Zoe had been Ivy's anchor through everything. But now I was starting to see cracks. She seemed quieter. More tense. Then one night, I found her crying in her room. On her phone were screenshots, comments from a few parents online. People wondering aloud if those girls from the Alden house were a bad influence. Some even suggesting that Zoe was encouraging Ivy's rebellion. I sat beside her, pulling her into a hug. "I'm so sorry," I whispered. "You don't deserve this." Zoe sniffled, wiping her eyes. "I don't care what those parents think. I just hate what it's doing to Ivy. And I'm scared about what Lillian might do next." I was scared too, though I tried not to show it. I was also completely exhausted. Between work, legal filings, parenting 2 traumatized girls, and trying to keep a household running, I was running on fumes. Ethan was doing everything he could, picking up the slack, but I could see how tired he was too. For a little while, it felt like we were finally finding a rhythm we could sustain. Then came the notice. The court had scheduled a review of Lillian's visitation. If she had met the required conditions and shown adequate progress, the court might consider increasing her access. We braced ourselves. 5 days before the hearing, Ivy walked into my room, shaking. Her phone trembled in her hands. "They're back," she said. Dozens of anonymous texts had come through. 1.5 years after another. "Liar. Everyone knows you're faking it. Attention seeker. Hope you finally do it this time." Some of them were worse, threats, the kind you can't unsee. A year and a half off. The messages read, "Maybe you should try killing yourself for real this time." I stared at Ivy's phone in horror. Without hesitation, I called the police. They took a report, promised to try tracing the numbers, but warned us that these kinds of harassment campaigns were notoriously hard to pin down. That same day, we got Ivy a new phone number. But the damage had already been done. That night, she had nightmares again. The next day, she barely spoke. Barely moved. It was like watching the progress she'd made over months unravel in a matter of hours. At the visitation review hearing, we brought everything. The texts. Screenshots. The phone company's trace results. It all led back to a burner phone bought at a convenience store just blocks from Lillian's apartment. Security footage from the store showed her at the counter, wearing a baseball cap, but still clearly identifiable. Lillian's lawyer tried to spin it, saying the footage didn't prove she sent the messages. But the judge wasn't buying it. Instead of granting Lillian more access, the court reaffirmed the existing supervised visitation and added a new requirement. Lillian would have to undergo a full psychological evaluation before the court would even consider any changes to the arrangement. Outside the courtroom, Lillian's attorney pulled me aside. "She's struggling financially," he said. "She's asking if you'd be open to reducing the child support amount so she can afford her therapy sessions." I just blinked at him. Child support? I haven't received a single cent from Lillian. He looked surprised. "My client said she's been paying substantial support regularly." "She lied," I said, flatly. "Check the records." That evening, after Lillian's supervised visit, Ivy was unusually quiet. I found her sitting on her bed, staring at the wall. "Everything all right, sweetheart?" I asked, gently sitting next to her. She paused. "She was different today," she said. "Calm. Friendly, even. She brought some of my old books from when I was little and talked like everything was normal." "That sounds like progress," I said carefully. "Yeah, but," Ivy's voice wavered. When the supervisor stepped away to take a call, Mom leaned in and whispered that she knew I'd come to my senses. And that I'd regret betraying her if I didn't. My heart dropped. "Did you tell the supervisor?" Ivy shook her head. She was smiling the whole time. Like she was just saying something sweet. It'd be my word against hers. The next day, I scheduled an emergency session with Dr. Lin. During the session, Dr. Lin gently suggested Ivy start documenting specific incidents, what Lillian said, how she acted, especially the subtle threats. It would help build a record for the court. "I know it's hard," she told Ivy, "but putting it on paper makes it real, and it helps people understand." Ivy agreed. But almost immediately, the process took a toll. Just writing down those memories, sent her spiraling. The nightmares returned. So did the panic attacks. We created a system, 20 minutes of writing, then a break. Zoe or I would stay close, offering quiet support. Even with that, it was grueling. But something important began to emerge from Ivy's writing. Patterns. We hadn't fully seen it before. But now, it was clear, every time Ivy had started to find independence, whether it was making new friends, bonding with Zoe, or growing closer to Colin, Lillian had found ways to sabotage it. Sometimes with guilt. Other times with manipulation. Or subtle threats. But always with the same goal, to pull Ivy back under control. Looking back, the signs had always been there. Ivy began recognizing patterns in her mother's behavior that she had once thought were just coincidences. Lillian would accidentally schedule family events on the same days Ivy had plans with friends. She'd plant seeds of doubt, saying, "I heard your friends were talking about you behind your back." She even called other parents, warning them, falsely, that Ivy was a bad influence, or that their children might be harmed by spending time with her. It was subtle. But always meant to isolate. While Ivy was unpacking all of this in therapy, Lillian's court-ordered psychological evaluation was finally completed and submitted. Almost immediately, her attorney filed a motion to have it sealed, claiming it was full of personal medical details that had no bearing on the custody case. We waited for 2 tense weeks before the judge ruled. Relevant portions that related directly to Lillian's parenting capacity would be unsealed and shared with the court. What came out was sobering. The psychologist observed troubling narcissistic behaviors and explicitly recommended against any unsupervised time with Ivy. The report stated that Lillian viewed her daughter less as an individual, and more as a reflection of herself, an object meant to serve her emotional needs and maintain her image. Lillian's reaction? She fired her attorney on the spot and claimed the psychologist was biased against mothers. In response, the court appointed a guardian ad litem, an independent evaluator whose only job was to assess Ivy's best interests from every possible angle. Her name was Brenda Ellison. Brenda Ellison was thorough, professional, fair. She interviewed everyone: me, Ethan, Colin, Elise, Ivy's teachers, her therapist. She reviewed months' worth of documentation and spent significant time in both households. She was really different with Brenda Ellison, Ivy said after her own interview. She turned on this whole supermom act, asking me about my homework and smiling like she cared. I tried not to worry that Brenda Ellison might be swayed by Lillian's performance. But it was hard not to. So much depended on her seeing the truth. And then, out of nowhere, an unexpected ally stepped forward. Celeste, one of Lillian's longtime friends who had once been openly hostile toward me, asked if we could meet for coffee. I agreed, cautiously, choosing a public place just in case. Celeste sat across from me, fidgeting with her cup before blurting out, "Lillian asked me to lie to the guardian." She said Lillian had told her exactly what to say, made up stories about tender mother-daughter moments, made up memories. Celeste confessed she'd almost gone along with it, but she couldn't. "I've known Lillian for years," she said. "I believed everything she told me about you. But now? I don't know anymore. Something isn't right." Celeste signed a sworn statement detailing Lillian's attempt to manipulate her testimony. We forwarded it to Brenda Ellison immediately. And then, another domino fell. Colin got a call from Miles, Lillian's ex-boyfriend. They had broken up shortly after the court proceedings began. But now, Miles said he wanted to come forward. "I should have spoken up sooner," he admitted. "I saw the signs. But I didn't want to believe it." He said Lillian was obsessed with one thing: winning. Beating me. Beating Colin. Beating the system. Her focus was never on Ivy's well-being. It was always about control, image, revenge. It wasn't about being Ivy's mom, he said. It was about proving she was right. No matter what it cost. Miles had been telling the truth. He shared screenshots, some that made my skin crawl. In them, Lillian casually talked about using Ivy's struggles to prop up her perfect mom image online. She complained that parenting a teenager was a burden and said things like, "My life would be easier without all this drama." Brenda Ellison, the guardian ad litem, compiled it all into her final report. It was thorough. Honest. Unflinching. She strongly recommended that Ivy remain in our custody, with therapeutic visits to Lillian continuing under strict supervision. But the report included something none of us saw coming. Brenda Ellison had uncovered a fundraising account, something Lillian had quietly set up online. It claimed to be collecting money for Ivy's recovery, therapy, and legal expenses. In reality, it was a lie. The judge ordered the account frozen immediately and launched a financial investigation. What they found was damning. Lillian had raised over $20,000 from sympathetic followers. Donations meant for Ivy's care had instead gone to fund Lillian's personal shopping sprees, vacations, and her mounting legal fees. The court ordered Lillian to repay every dollar and issued a ban on her using Ivy's name or photo online for any purpose. When the community learned about the fraud, the final shift in public opinion happened. Friends, neighbors, even former supporters of Lillian, finally saw her for who she really was. Lillian tried to save face. She recommitted to her therapy program and resumed parenting classes. But her new therapist reported she was simply going through the motions, present, but not participating in any meaningful way. Despite Lillian's complaints, the court kept every restriction in place. As the school year progressed, Ivy began talking about college. She wanted to tour some East Coast art schools, something that would require court approval for out-of-state travel under the custody arrangement. We filed the motion months in advance, expecting a fight. Sure enough, Lillian pushed back, arguing Ivy was too emotionally fragile to travel that far. But the guardian ad litem stood firm. She praised Ivy's progress, her strong academics, her emotional growth, her resilience. The judge approved the visits without hesitation. Ivy was thriving. Around the same time, a card arrived in the mail. It was from Lillian. She wrote that she was finally finding peace. There were no manipulations this time, just a simple update. Whether it was sincere or another performance, we didn't dwell on it. Now, 1 year later, Ivy is flourishing. College has become her own world. Her own rhythm. She still sees her therapist once in a while, but the focus now is everyday college stress, exams, deadlines, relationships, not trauma. She splits her holidays and breaks between our home and Collins, and Zoe visits her on campus as often as she can. The two of them remain as close as ever. Lillian still reaches out now and then. The tone of her messages has changed, more subdued, more respectful. But they still carry a familiar undertone, a suggestion of what their relationship could be, if only. Ivy doesn't respond often. When she does, it's on her terms. Not out of guilt, not out of fear, but as part of her own healing. A boundary, not a bridge. Last week, she called me with a voice full of joy. They picked my work, she said. It's going to be in a student exhibition. They asked me to invite family to the opening. She paused for a moment, then added, so I need you, Ethan, Zoe. Dad, Elise, and the kids. You're all my family. We wouldn't miss it for the world, I told her. And I meant it. The fractured friendship with Lillian will always be a piece of this story, like a scar that fades but never fully disappears. Sometimes, I still think about the person I believed she was. The sister I thought I had. But what we've built in her absence. It's deeper. It's real. A family not formed by chance, but by intention. A family shaped around love, healing, and Ivy's future. Now, I watch Ivy chase her dreams with fearless determination. I see Zoe, whose loyalty and heart gave Ivy strength when she had none of her own. I see Colin and his family, who opened their arms and never looked back. We lost something. But we gained so much more. And Ivy? She is no longer a girl trying to survive. She's a young woman, creating her own life, full of color, passion, and peace.